Everfree Guardian, Chapter 3. The sound of dirt being ruptured by a shovel clapped through the small yard, as Nate drove a spade into the ground, taking up a bit of dirt and tossing it aside. Using his foot, he scooted some vegetable seeds under a hole, placing the dirt that he dug back up over it, as he moved on to the next spot. A few days have passed since that incident with the Timberwolves and the cows. Nate's arm is healed, but the bite had left a small scar. Nothing that Nate cared about, but Granny Smith was insistent on checking it over multiple times for any severe damage. Thankfully, the bite missed any nerves and neglected to dislocate or break any of his bones. All it really did was take a small chunk out of him, which was something that he was naturally able to heal from easily. Coming back to work this morning after a weekend's rest, the Apple family put him to work. Applejack herself had him doing what he usually does in the morning, then Big Mac had him pull the plow over the fields beyond what he was working on now. Coming the early evening, Nate was instructed by Granny Smith to sort out and replace some vegetables near the back of their gardens. With the last hole dug and the remaining seeds slid in, he covered it up and patted down the dirt. Stabbing the spade into the dirt, he reached over and grabbed the hose, turning the stream of water towards the freshly planted crops. After giving them a healthy drink, he wrung the hose back to the barn's left outer wall and turned the water off. Turning back to the garden, he nodded to himself in satisfaction as he held the shovel at his side.
That's some mighty fine work there, Mr. Schmidt.
Nate turned to his left, seeing Big Mac walking up to him.
Some pretty efficient work too, if I might add. Y'all were able to pick up apple baskets, plow the fields, and plant some new seeds in our garden, all before supper time.
The uncharacteristically chatty stallion gave Nate a nod as he patted his shoulder.
You've certainly proven your use as a rancher, Mr. Schmidt.
Nate nodded back as the two turned towards the gardens, feeling the cooling breeze of dusk blow by as the orange hue of sunset began to settle on the horizon. Looking up at it, Nate found this to be a perfect time to call it a day. He's gotten a lot done, and if Big Mac of all ponies was voicing this himself, then that damn well means something. Walking into the side entrance to the barn, Nate moved to the corner that had all the racks and equipment lockers. Lifting the spade up, he clipped it onto its hook, tugging on the shovel lightly before letting it sway on the hook gently. Stepping away and making his way out, he exited the barn through the main door and stared out towards the afternoon sun. This really was a beautiful orchard. With miles upon miles of greenery and the fresh riches of nature such as apples, Nate was almost thankful that technology hadn't advanced to an industrial level yet. It sucks that he can't use a fucking phone, but at the same time, there's no clouds of smoke polluting the atmosphere like humans did in the past. And in the present.
We really are a shitty species, aren't we?
He shook his head of those thoughts, sighing as he began to work his way back to the Sweet Apple Acres entrance. With all of his work done, he was able to leave early, and he wasn't keen on sticking around for supper again. There's only so many times that he could eat with the Apple family before he starts thinking that he's mooching off of them, employment or otherwise. Nate Schmidt was not a dependent person. He had survived things that no pony or creature on this harmonic planet would ever dream to experience. Hell, he's done things that... No. What's happened in the past can't be undone. His shame remains as a constant reminder of his sins, of his mistakes, and the so-called family that he burned along with the rest. There's no point in thinking about it.
Easier said than done, Schmidt.
He shook his head as he opened the gates of the orchard, walking out after locking it shut. Aimlessly wandering down the path towards the Everfree forest, Nate was planning on stopping by Fluttershy's to see what she was up to. It's been a few days since they last spoke, mainly because Fluttershy had a bit more on her plate than usual, so he was hoping to catch up with one of his only friends here on Equus. As he moved to the intersection leading to Fluttershy's cottage and the Everfree, he saw from there that the door was shut and the lights were out. Fluttershy wasn't home, and judging from the lack of animals wandering about, she hadn't been home for quite some time.
She must have gotten up earlier than usual for something.
Nate shrugged it off, still making his way towards the Shy Mare's home. Instead of going inside, he went over to check the chicken coop, leaning on the small house, as he watched the flightless birds do their thing. Fluttershy really does do a good job keeping them together and happy. Just the mere fact that these animals show and feel more emotion than their instinctual counterparts on Earth baffles Nate. But at the same time, it's endearing. Everything has a personality. Even that big motherfucking bear that he was initially frightening and defensive towards had a soft side. Most of it was reserved for Fluttershy, but after spending so much time here, all the animals grew used to him being around. Nate let a grin etch onto his face as the chickens approached him, one brushing up against him before tending to her eggs. With them all returning to their young, the human looked out towards Ponyville. What was Fluttershy doing that was taking up most of her days? He'd almost never seen her this busy before. But then again, he's only been in Equestria for a little under 5 weeks. He doesn't know the ins and outs of this world like a pony does. Still though, that doesn't keep the 21-year-old from trying. His eyes trailed over Ponyville, his teeth gently grazing over his bottom lip. Fluttershy had wanted him to come to Ponyville at least once while he stayed here, and while he didn't fancy the town very much, and the fact that he wanted to keep himself concealed in the case that they didn't take kindly to aliens, He wasn't one to turn down those that he cared about. Fluttershy had done right by him a lot more than he had her. He owed her a favor or two at least, and besides, he said he'd consider a visit into town not too long ago. He might as well make do with his promises and make her happy. Pulling out his work gloves, Nate hid his hands with them, ensuring that he wouldn't expose his bare skin to the populace. There may be 10 ponies roaming in Ponyville, but one look at his tan skin and black hairs on his arm, and they'll know immediately that Nate is different from them. He hopes that the media with his sighting has also died away as well. The notoriety that he had in those days was staggering. Every now and again, one brave and stupid fool would come into the forest looking for him. If he hadn't swept their path up of timberwolves and other deadly traps, they would have never been alive long enough to be scared back into Ponyville. But with all that fading and the rumor now just believed to be another pony just wandering near the tree line of the forest, the resident human was somewhat in the clear. But he could never be too careful. Ensuring that his gloves were snug and that he still had his Smith & Wesson holstered at his side, he pushed off the chicken coop and took the other way of the intersection for the first time of his new life here. The walk itself was quiet. The calm breeze of nature seemed to soothe his anxiety, though the latter only continued to rise regardless as he came closer and closer to town. When he found the sign welcoming people to Ponyville, he stopped. Eyeing the sign intently, he glanced back the way he came, then turned forward. There was no going back now that he's come this far from home. I mean, it wasn't far, but it would look odd if he just walked away with ponies looking his way. So, taking his first steps into town, he paced himself in order to get a look at everything. The houses around Ponyville were as simple as expected, given that this place was more of a large village with a central town hall than any form of a small city or open-bordered state town. It made sense for the houses to be simple. It was homey and inviting for newcomers. Walking down one street, then turning off into another, Nate pressed on more and more, earning glances from stallions and mares every now and again. He did find a few familiar faces. That teacher Cheerly was by one of the stores that he passed by. She gave him a smile and a wave, to which he returned with a curt nod and a wave of his own. Other than that, all the faces around here were roughly new to him, and vice versa for the ponies. The rumors of the monkey with a boomstick came up again, causing Nate's nerves to tense, but they quickly faded as some of the other ponies cast off those beliefs, as they accused Nate of being a pony, just like them. On and on this village went. Now, if it weren't for the fact that it was sizable from the hills of the Everfree, Nate would assume Ponyville was much bigger than it was. But after 10 minutes or so, he found himself in the shopping district near Town Hall. Walking up to one of the empty tables set off to the side for ponies to rest at, he leaned against the edge with his arm resting on the corner. He watched as the ponies went about their day, the bustling village being a stark contrast to the serene and quiet Sweetapple Acres. His moment of peace was severed as he heard laughter from above. Turning his head upwards, he eyed through his hood at 2 individuals flying by. One of them was a Cyan Pegasus, while the other was some odd hybrid between a cat and an eagle. She, like every other female he's known, had a body girls back home would kill for. Are all creatures on this planet this unrealistic? He shook his head as the two swerved around the houses, landing nearby.
That was sweet. Anyways, I gotta go take care of the few weather jobs around here. It shouldn't take long. Just, hang around in town and I'll come find ya. That's cool, I guess. I'm gonna go chow down. Later!
The blue Pegasus flew off, leaving the hybrid behind as Nate got a better look at her. Upon closer inspection, he'd be hard-pressed to not know what this new creature was, and anyone worth their salt in mythology would identify her as a griffin. Head of an eagle and the body of a lion, and boy fucking howdy, this weird land of anthropomorphics definitely blessed her with good looks. She was one of those kinds of girls who would call you tiger as a flirt. Think Mary Jane Watson, but with a personality that puts out more. You get what I mean. Afterwards, Nate stayed at his table, watching the griffin with interest, and the more that he observed her, the more that he began to see just how different griffins are to ponies. Having spotted a vegetable stand nearby, the griffin made her way over, sneaking by the vendor and sticking her tail out in front of the products. Nate didn't see it before, but Granny Smith was in town as well, most likely to pick up something that she wasn't growing at the farm. When she saw the griffin's tail, she shrieked and backpedaled.
Rattler! It's a rattler! Run for the hills! Every opponent for themselves!
Nate watched Granny Smith sprint for the hills back down the street that she came from. Narrowing his eyes, he leaned off the table, keeping his hand on it as the griffin lingered at the cart, the same tail drawing a potato from the stand. She just ate it away as she moved on, making it clear that she wasn't intending on paying for what she just snagged. Nate flexed his fingers, drumming the table as he turned his head away. It's hard enough to keep his head down with the rumors of his sightings, and the last thing he needs is to get involved with this woman.
All right, little ones, this way now.
Nate recognized the voice from Fluttershy almost immediately. Turning back to the street, he could see that she was returning from a trip, but had also decided to spare the time to help some ducklings get through the crowded paths of Ponyville. A grin etched onto the incognito human's face, but it quickly faded when he saw Fluttershy backing towards the griffin's path. Oh shit. Nate stepped away from the table, walking forward to go intercept Fluttershy. But even if he was as fast as his bullets, he wouldn't have made it in time before Fluttershy bumped into the griffin.
Hey!
The yellow Pegasus looked up at the feathered hybrid, blinking as she stepped back.
Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't looking. I'm walking here, pal. What's your problem?
Fluttershy, intimidated by the larger figure, especially with her wings flared out, backed away from the griffin.
I'm sorry. I was just leading the little ones along, and I don't give a flying fuck what you were doing. Why don't you just watch where the hell you're going, you tant-furred whore?
Nate's hand twitched as his eyes immediately glinted with hate and anger, a rush that he was very much familiar with. The one-sided shouting match continued between the two as he walked towards them, his steeled nature surfacing as he knew the only response people like this griffin would understand. Violence. Plus, there's a bit of an unspoken rule here in Ponyville. Nobody yells at or makes Fluttershy cry. I bet she was not expecting that. Especially since it didn't seem like she saw him yet, so it was the perfect opportunity. Though I really don't recommend punching anybody, especially if you were the one to punch first, because of legal issues, but still, that must have been one hell of a punch. Anyways, let's get on to our very strong donators. Top donators: TacoCat598, Peter Coulthard, J Tinman, Darkside, Gauntlet, and Only One Thing. Zar630, Strix, Rayden, Narwhals, Black Moonheart, Drake Lovedragon, Pastel Skies, Austin Roland, CrazyKiller557, Stu Hex, Will, Dospo, Madman Stan, Delta Omega, Jack Hadge, RuneScythe9852, Leslie Prickett, Anton Norman, Stephen Bingham, LineGuy12, and many more fantastic people. Thank you all so much for watching this video and live life to the fullest.